everyone! So in this video we're going to be talking about solar systems. We're going to go through the order of the planets, the two major types of planets, and characteristics of each planet, and we're even going to talk about the sun. Also, this channel is a part of a nonprofit organization called One World, One Nation, where we strive to support children that might not have access to an education or provide all children with an extended learning opportunity. So please subscribe to this channel to support our initiative. The 8 planets. There are 8 planets that are in our solar system. When I say solar system, I'm referring to planets that revolve around the sun. Remember from previous videos that the Earth revolves around the sun and it takes 1 year for this to happen. Just like the Earth, there are 7 other planets that revolve around the sun, and it takes each of these planets a specific amount of time to go around the whole sun just once. Now, what allows these planets to go around the sun? Well, there are certain pulls and forces between a planet and the sun that make sure that the planet goes around the sun in an orbit. An orbit is basically just the path which the planet takes to go around the sun. So the 8 planets are Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, with Mercury being the closest to the sun and Neptune being the farthest from the sun. An easy way to remember this is my very enthusiastic mother just served us noodles, with the first letter of each word corresponding to the planet. Now we just talked about how there are a total of 8 planets in our solar system. Also, just a side note, it is called the solar system because all the planets revolve around the sun, which is what the solar refers to. Okay, anyway, we just talked about how there are 8 planets in our solar system, but these planets can actually be broken down into 2 categories, terrestrial planets and gas giants. Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars are called terrestrial planets because these planets are made of stones and soil that you can actually walk on. The other 4 planets, which are Jupiter, Uranus, Saturn, and Neptune, are called gas giants. These planets are different from terrestrial planets because they are not made of rocks and hard material, but are made of more gases and ices, so you can't actually walk on the planet. So gas giants basically have no solid surface. Also, just another thing about the planets in general, all planets have gravity, but the amount of gravity is different for all planets and depends on the mass of the 2 objects and the distance between the 2 centers of the objects. So now we know that there are 2 main kinds of planets, one with a hard surface and one's made with gases. But how are the individual planets different from each other? Why can't humans live like we do on Earth on the planet Mercury? Well, let's first take a look at Mercury, the first planet of the solar system. Like we have discussed, this is the closest planet to the sun, and it is also the smallest planet. This planet has lots and lots of craters on the surface, and if you look up close at the planet, you might be able to see the huge holes or depressions in the planet, and these are called craters, and this is due to the planet not having much of an atmosphere, so it cannot protect itself from the craters that are coming to the surface. Only terrestrial planets would have craters because you cannot have a depression or a hole in the gas of the gas giants. Also, even though Mercury is the closest to the sun, it is actually not the hottest planet. The hottest planet is Venus. This is because Mercury, again, has no atmosphere at all, and the atmosphere is what holds and traps the heat of the sun. But with no atmosphere, the heat can't be trapped, so it will not be hot. No atmosphere does not mean that there will be no gravity, because all gravity is dependent on is the mass of the planet. And since Mercury has a mass, there is still gravity, even if that gravity is less than the Earth's gravitational force. Also, Mercury rotates very slowly, but can revolve the sun pretty fast. 1 year for Mercury, or how long it takes Mercury to fully revolve around the sun once, is only 88 days. But to completely rotate around its own axis, it takes much longer than 24 hours. It actually takes months. So Mercury has no moons revolving around it. Just another side fact. So we've talked about Mercury, which is the closest planet to the sun. Now we're going to talk about the second closest planet to the sun, which is Venus. Venus is actually known as Earth's twin or sister planet because it has a gravitational force that is similar to Earth's, because it's a similar size and a similar mass as Earth. But the reason humans cannot live on Venus like we can on Earth is because Venus is extremely hot, and it's actually the hottest planet in our solar system. This is because of its atmosphere. Venus is not only pretty close to the Sun, so it can get direct radiation from the Sun, but it also has an atmosphere that is covered with clouds, and so once heat gets into the planet, it's hard to get out. Like we know, Venus is a terrestrial planet, and not only does it have a rocky surface, but it also has mountains and volcanoes. Also, Venus is kind of special because unlike most of the other planets, it actually spins the opposite direction on its axis as compared to most of the other planets, including Earth. So as for the number of days in the year for Venus that the Sun rises, in 1 year the Sun only comes up twice in that 1 year. So while it may be able to spin around the Sun in a shorter amount of time, since it's closer to the Sun, it actually takes way longer to spin around its own axis. Also, just like Mercury, this planet has no moons. So now we move into the third planet, which is Earth. So we all probably know the most about Earth than any other planet. So Earth has one moon, and it has many different types of terrain. For instance, there are mountains, deserts, canyons, forests, and so on. Also, our atmosphere, unlike Mercury, actually helps protect us against meteors that might collide with our planet, as the atmosphere can crush the meteors and turn it into like a dust or powder, so it doesn't actually form craters on the Earth's surface. Also, this atmosphere traps the heat that we get from the Sun, so we can live in these temperatures, and so can all the other living organisms. Also, something else that makes Earth especially unique is that it has a lot of liquid water, and is actually made up of 70% water, which is why there's so much life on Earth and why we are able to live on Earth. So like we know, Mars is the last terrestrial planet, and if you look up into the sky, sometimes you might be able to actually see the planet. It will be a pretty small red dot. That's right, all of Mars is made up of a red-looking sand that is actually made from rusting iron, and you can see this color all the way from Earth, even though Mars is small compared to Earth. Also, many scientists talk about colonizing or living on Mars because Mars's atmosphere actually has some similarities to Earth's atmosphere. For instance, it is said to have liquid water, seasons, and it has some of the same gases that are in Earth's atmosphere. Would you want to live on Mars? Well, that actually might be a possibility in the near future. Another thing about Mars is that 1 day in Mars lasts similar to 1 day in Earth, but 1 year is a lot longer and is actually double. So this means that it takes a long time to orbit or revolve around the Sun, but it's about the same amount of time to rotate around its own axis as Earth. Also, Mars has 2 moons instead of just 1 moon like Earth has, and these moons also have names. One of them is named Phobos and the other one is Deimos. Now we are going to move into one of the planets that is a gas giant, Jupiter. As you might recall from earlier, this planet is by far the biggest planet in our solar system. Also, since Jupiter is a gas giant, it is made up of mostly gas, and specifically hydrogen, so it is not hard and rocky, but it does have a core, and this core is the size of Earth. Based on the picture, you can just tell how much bigger Jupiter is if the core is as big as Earth. Also, you might notice that Jupiter has many streaks and lines that go around it. Some of these streaks are formed by clouds that are in the planet's atmosphere. Also, this planet can rotate around its axis really fast. It only takes about 10 hours for 1 day or 1 rotation of Jupiter. But it takes very long to go around the Sun, about 11 Earth years. Also, you can think of Jupiter as just having a lot of everything. It has a lot of hydrogen, it is a big planet, it has a large core, and it has many moons. So far we have talked about how Mercury and Venus have no moons, Earth has just 1 moon, Mars has 2 moons, so you might think that there are only a couple more moons for Jupiter based on the pattern. But Jupiter has 79 moons that scientists know about as of now. Another cool thing about Jupiter is there are actually many storms that happen on the planet. In fact, the large spot called the Big Red Spot on Jupiter is a very large windy storm, actually bigger than all of Earth. Also, just like some other planets, Jupiter has rings around it, but these rings are not very visible. So even though Jupiter has rings around it, when you think of the planet with rings, you most likely picture Saturn. The rings of Saturn are actually made up of many rings and are made of dust, rocks, and ice pieces that are all kinds of shapes and sizes. Some of these materials are actually pulled from the moons of other planets and trapped in the gravitational pull around Saturn. But you might wonder, what makes Saturn so special that it is the only one with such visible rings? Well, this actually has to do with Saturn's moons. We know that some of the planets we have talked about have many moons, and these moons have a gravitational force and orbits around the planet. Well, Saturn has 53 moons, according to NASA, and their gravitational forces actually help collect dust and the ices and the rocks, and they force them into the ring around Saturn. Now, as for the composition of Saturn, or what Saturn is made of, it is made up of similar gases as Jupiter, helium and hydrogen. Also, one day on Saturn is very fast-paced as compared to time on Earth. One day on Saturn is less than half a day on Earth, or less than 12 hours. But 1 year on Saturn is very, very long compared to Earth. NASA says it takes about 30 years for Saturn to revolve around the Sun. So on Earth, people usually live for around 90 years, but on Saturn, those 90 years would only be 3 years according to Saturn's revolution around the Sun, meaning Saturn would only revolve the Sun 3 times while the Earth revolved around the Sun 90 times. So Uranus is the second to last planet, and we know that this is a gas giant. This planet is also made up of helium and hydrogen, but do you notice anything different about Uranus? Well, for one thing, it is blue. Uranus is blue because in addition to the helium and hydrogen, it also has methane in its atmosphere, which makes it blue. As for the actual planet, Uranus has a rocky core like Jupiter, but instead of hydrogen and helium, it is made out of water, methane, and other fluids, and since it is made of many fluids, it is called an ice giant instead of a gas giant. Uranus is another planet that has rings, but are not very visible. Another very surprising fact about Uranus is that just like Venus, it actually spins in the opposite direction or rotates in the opposite direction as most planets do. But the most surprising fact about Uranus is that Uranus is actually tilted sideways. Uranus's rings might appear to be vertical or going up and down, but the truth is that the whole planet Uranus is actually flipped on its side. There are many theories about what caused this sideways turn. One is that small bodies collided with the planet so powerfully that it turned it sideways, and another theory is that one very large body smashed against Uranus and turned it sideways. Also, Uranus has many moons as well, but not as many as Saturn or Jupiter. It has 27 moons according to NASA. As we know, Neptune is the last planet of our solar system and is the last gas giant. Since it is the farthest from the Sun, it is the coldest planet. But as for the composition, it is very similar to Uranus, as it too is blue, and the color blue is made from the gas methane. It is also made up of hydrogen and helium like the other gas giants, and it has a couple of rings going around it too, but these are not very visible either. Also, like Uranus, Neptune is considered an ice giant since it is also made of water and other fluids that surrounds the rocky core. Neptune's core is the size of Earth, just like Jupiter's core. Neptune also has the least amount of moons of all the gas giants, with NASA claiming it to only have 14 moons confirmed by scientists so far, and says that 1 day in Neptune is only 16 hours long on Earth. But 1 year for Neptune is very, very long. It takes about 165 years for Neptune to go around the Sun once, since it has the largest orbit, since it's the farthest from the Sun. So, like we have been talking about, the Sun is the center of attention and what all the planets revolve around, and it is why our solar system is called the solar system. Before, scientists thought that all the planets revolve around the Earth, and they call this the geocentric system, where the Earth is in the center. But over years and through new observations made possible by new technology, scientists now agree upon the idea that all planets revolve around the Sun. So why do all the planets orbit the Sun in the first place? Well, about 4.5 billion years ago, there was an immensely large cloud that was made up of dust and gas. There are clouds like this in space, but what makes this cloud of dust and gas so special was because nearby there was a star or some kind of explosion that disturbed this cloud of dust and caused a supernebula to form, which is basically a spinning cloud disk, and it spins around really, really fast. And this causes the cloud to pull all nearby objects that are floating around in space into this swirling cloud of dust and create a large gravitational force in the center of the swirling cloud. This force, or core of the cloud, started to use the hydrogen gas that was in the cloud and rocks and all the things that were coming into the cloud and created helium with the hydrogen, and all of this 99% of all of these components inside of the cloud formed together and clumped together in the center to form the Sun. Most of the hydrogen and helium went into the Sun during this time, but around it there were also tiny chunks of material forming around the Sun, and this includes asteroids, moons, and if the chunks were big enough, they were considered planets. So, as you can tell, the Sun is made up of a lot of hydrogen, and this hydrogen combines and fuses to form helium. The hydrogen and helium are likely the core of the Sun, but some of the gas even turns into the plasma. Also, the Sun is not a planet, but is a star. So that's the end of this video. I hope you learned a lot about planets and are excited and inspired to learn more about the solar system and the world around us. Again, this channel is part of a nonprofit organization, One World, One Nation, and I'm going to leave our website link in the description box below. And if you would like to become a student or a mentor for this organization, then check out the website and you can fill out an application to become part of this initiative to aid children in helping them find their passions in science. So here are a couple of citations I used for the pictures of this video. Here are a couple of more citations we used for this video. And here are the last bit of citations we used for this video. Again, I hope you enjoyed, and please subscribe to this channel to support our initiative. Thank you.